If you're someone that has a very busy schedule and doesn't necessarily have the time to push themselves through lengthy gym workouts, but still actually want to see some decent progress as a natural lifter, then you might want to watch this video. So I'm going to talk about exercise routine abbreviation, one protocol in particular that will relate to that, and how it can maybe help you to build more muscle, increase your strength with a lot less time spent in the gym. So this video will be targeted more towards a mature audience, people with perhaps more hectic work schedules, families that don't necessarily have the same amount of time that they would have in their late teens and early 20s to commit to the gym. I've prepared a rough script for this video as it is going to be quite long, but I've got some B-roll footage relevant to the training protocol and also some training footage from my own sessions as I predominantly train in this style. Hopefully you enjoyed the video and it proves somewhat useful. Workout abbreviation is a skill that seems to have been forgotten in the latest shift towards more high volume routines. Now we're talking a lot about minimum effective volume, multiple sets of low fatigue to stimulus-based movements, lots of pulley, machine and cable exercises, more focused on isolations as opposed to compounds. So the concept of taking a typical 90-minute session, for example, and condensing that down into 60 or 70 minutes or even 40 minutes is alien to most people. They would rather accept the notion that they don't have time to train and give it up entirely. I mean, how many times have you heard someone say they haven't got time to train and they're not doing it anymore? It's absurd, as you know, I believe that the vast majority of potential muscular gains can occur from a relatively small amount of work. So let's say hypothetically that you can reach maybe 90% of the muscle mass gain from 120 minutes per week, i.e. 3 by 40 minutes, as you would from 450 minutes, i.e. 5 times 90 minutes. Would those extra hours in the gym be a worthwhile trade-off for the normal guy? Probably not. And I think that's being conservative. Those percentages may be even higher. I believe in some cases that you can make better progress with less work, depending on kind of where you are with your training and your physique, current state of fatigue, lifestyle, stress, and there's a whole number of variables that can go into that will determine your success on a particular routine. But I think predominantly this is down to less accumulated fatigue and residual soreness, which will equate to greater intensities being reached in the gym, and perhaps more consistent jumps in progression on the lifts each week. We'll touch on that a little bit later. The fact remains, okay, that brilliant muscular growth can occur from a limited dose of training, albeit if executed effectively and with enough intensity. That's important. So abbreviated training sessions can be an incredibly useful tool when you have limited time to commit to the gym, for whatever reason that may be. Learning how to do this will benefit you massively in your ever-continuing quest for greater levels of muscle mass. It's a really important skill, guys. So you've got to try to learn how to do it. Shorter sessions can also prevent workout burnout, reduce boredom, and increase training enjoyment, which will all add to a better protocol adherence. But that's a different subject altogether. I mean, today I trained with 2 of my clients, had a great session. It was a high volume session. We pumped out a lot of sets. But really, if I had to do that every day in the gym, if I was on my own, I would find it boring. I certainly don't have the time to be able to do that. You know, I wasn't working today. I, gave up 2 hours to commit to that training session. But realistically, I can't do that every day. So I have no choice but to condense my workouts down. Without further ado, let's get into the training protocol. Now, the first one I first read in a book in my early 20s. It just fascinated me. It's a fantastic read, and I'd go as far to say that anyone really interested in bodybuilding or strength should own this book, or books by this author. And this particular book that I read was The Wisdom of Mike Mentzer. And in this book, he explains his philosophy, his training theory, and he created a very abbreviated routine in the 90s called the Consolidation Routine. And that's what we're going to talk about here. So the routine was created by the 1980 IFBB Mr. Olympia 4th place finisher, losing to a downsized Arnold Schwarzenegger. This was to be his last competition as he retired shortly after at the age of 29. The gentleman is, of course, Mike Mentzer, the only bodybuilder to this day to receive a perfect score of 300 points during a professional bodybuilding competition. The routine in question, as I said before, is a consolidation routine, of which there are 3 versions. We're going to take a look at the third and lowest volume edition of this protocol. Although officially this routine wasn't printed in paper until the mid-90s, at least in a form commercially available, the origins of the protocol no doubt began in the 70s as Mike Mentzer, through Casey Viator, learnt of Arthur Jones and his minimalistic and intensity-based training routines performed solely on his Nautilus exercise machine range. So the concept was very, very simple. 2 brief full-body sessions to be completed within 4 to 7 days of one another. 4 exercises in total with 2 per workout. 1 working set to be performed for each exercise. So the program is iconic really with anyone interested in training and HIT work in particular. You know, the fact that you can build a better body with such a small amount of work is mind-blowing to a lot of people, but that's the reality of hard training. So the number of exercises had been whittled down over the 3 versions, from 7 to 6 before Mike finally settled with 4, which was the final version of the consolidation routine. He removed calves, behind the net press and barbell rows. This is workout abbreviation in its purest form. Mike was convinced that the entire body could be trained effectively with these 4 movements, and that there was no need for additional stimulus once the sets had been completed. Any work that was to be completed in addition to these 4 exercises or 4 sets was simply surplus to requirement and would actually hinder progress by further increasing the need for recovery. And that's kind of the main philosophy of HIT, at least from Mike Mentzer's perspective. So Mike believed that the muscle building process would be triggered once the target musculature had been exposed to a greater, more intense stimulus than ever before. Once this had been set in motion, the target musculature would receive no further stimulus until complete recovery, hence why the sessions are spread out so far apart. This cycle would then be repeated indefinitely, allowing greater recovery periods between sessions as the stimulus grew more intense. How long is this cycle able to continue for, and at what point does increasing the length of time between sessions start to actually hinder physique development? And that's the interesting question, and I think that's where maybe the theory kind of breaks up a little bit. You know, at what point is there too much rest and you start going backwards, where sessions are so infrequent that detraining occurs and muscle mass is lost? Is it necessary to add more rest days? I just don't know. I guess you would have to try the routine to find out, but I think personally it's a little bit excessive, and I think recoverability of the body is actually pretty good, assuming that all the variables are outside training are conducive to recovery, which is important. Now, if I were to do this, personally what I would do, I would have fixed days per week, i.e. day 1 on Monday, day 2 on, say, Thursday. And I would make sure that I would use mini plates. Mini plates are really, really important. They're going to help you out, especially when a program is so focused on progressive overload. It's imperative you've got access to small increments. Ideally train with someone to make use of advanced techniques such as rest pause, force reps, force negative, statics, omnicontraction, etc. Omnicontraction basically is a combination of force negatives, statics at a particular point on the negative, and yeah, it's a really intense way of training, obviously. I would also add in maybe a couple of direct arm exercises. So I had a client doing this, and he really achieved great results, I have to say. Unfortunately, he got sick. He went on holiday a couple of times, and we've moved on to something else for a little bit. And we'll probably come back to this later on. But I added in some curls and some overhead extensions alongside the 4 exercises, and it worked really well, actually. So personally, I don't think the arm development is going to be significant enough. If you don't have crazy arm genetics, you're only doing dips for tricep development and close grip pull downs for bicep development. I just don't think it's enough. So that's what I would do. I would maybe consider changing the deadlift to maybe a stiff leg variation. Yeah, you're going to lose a little bit of weight on the bar, but you're going to stimulate the hamstrings. So that's going to give you a fuller thigh development. That would be another exercise that I'd maybe tweak. So HIT in its most abbreviated version, the consolidation routine, is based on a logical rationale and one that many still follow today. Countless programs have since emerged with similar base principles. The genius of Mike Mentzer cannot be denied, irrespective of whether you think it's right or wrong. He was a forward thinker, ahead of his time, especially since he was developing these theories in the 80s and 90s, where volume was unequivocally king. It was almost unheard of to follow any other routine. So yeah, this is my thought on HIT. I think it's a really interesting concept, and if more people were to learn how to condense their routine down, you don't have to follow this particular protocol. There are other ways of doing it, different programs that you can follow, some other well-known HIT training protocols. But ultimately, the ability to condense your training down, to fit it into shorter periods of time, will help you out, especially as a more mature lifter, to continue seeing the results that you want as a busy man. Let's say you had, 2 sessions of 20 minutes in the gym. You could still build a really good physique. That's the power of intense training. You could do dip and chin supersets on day 1. You could do squats on day 2. Simple. And you'd achieve a good, well-rounded physique eventually if you're training hard enough. That's the reality of it. And that thought for me makes it really, really exciting going forwards, knowing that I can still train however much time that I have available, for those periods of time where I am busy. I can still, partake in my hobby. It doesn't have to ever stop. I can always find time to do it, irrespective of how busy I am, and that's just a great feeling. So it's definitely a skill that is important to learn. You can maybe try out the consolidation routine. Let me know how you get on with it. Let me know your thoughts on this video. Really appreciate the feedback. Thanks for watching, guys. Stay tuned for the next one. Stay strong.